Good evening. It is the first day of Davos, the World Economic Forum, and we are at Greek House Davos. And so it's the end of day one. It's been a full day. We started early this morning, about 7:30, and I do appreciate you, for those who are online, for joining us tonight. And today's conversation is about creating excellence in aerospace, security, and defense in the EU. I've got Mr. Christian Hadjiminas, chairman of the IFA group, with me tonight. And thank you for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for inviting me.
So this is a fascinating topic, looking at where we are on the continent now in Europe. It is a moment of conflict and of turmoil. And so, but before we get into some of those issues that I'm sure you're facing and talking with other leaders about, I want to talk to you about your journey as with your company. And I mean, I have to read this because I couldn't memorize it, but this is, you're the largest Greek group of companies in the defense and security sector. You're in 58 countries around the world, having your business supported in 5 different subsidiaries. You're in Germany, you do business in Germany, the US, the UAE, Saudi Arabia, Singapore. You have co-production facilities in the Middle East and Far East. You're a big success story in taking a company from the start to where you are today. So talk a little bit about, before we get into the security and all those other conversations, I think your story is inspiring for that young entrepreneur, for that entrepreneur that is out there that says, I'm just a small company here in Greece. I can't think globally. I can't think of doing business in the United States or in Germany or Europe. Talk about that journey a little bit.
Yeah, thank you for this introduction. Indeed, let's forgetting about aerospace and defense as a sector, which is a very difficult sector for any country, any company, unless
Correct.
there is a background and history, like in the States, in Germany, in the UK, and so on. It's very difficult. But let's put that on the side. I think what is very important, and we have fostered a culture in the company, because what was most important for us is to inspire young Greek engineers. That was my goal and my target, and I think it worked in the end, because I refer to them, to our history, not in a way, in the old-fashioned way, but in the sense that Greeks have always managed to do something different, which was, they were not just trading in places, they were creating colonies. That was very important, because when they were creating colonies, a lot of the European cities in like Marseille or other Spanish cities in the Mediterranean basin, for instance, they were all colonies of Greeks, and actually of cities that were not even the important ones, like Athens or Sparta. Okay, it was like Chalkida and other cities in Athens. So what they did was that they landed in those places in order to be able to not just to trade, but to understand the societies there, create colonies, interact with the locals, and create a relationship of trust. And that's a very big difference, and that's why I'm telling also other Greek entrepreneurs, but also Greek industrialists who have something to offer, is that you have to really do this. One, for instance, company that did this very successful was Tsipita. Tsipita was a food company, and one of their main product was the croissant that we eat every day in the morning.
Right.
And but this simple croissant had some kind of a technology in it. Okay, it has. In order for them, when they went to Mexico or other faraway lands, what they did is they created industrial participation relationships there. This is exactly what we did as well. We went to countries. We had something to offer. We shared it with many cultures. We were very open-minded, and that's very important. So Greeks, lesson number one, they have to inspire from the history, but in this fashion, when we talk about commercial things. The second thing is that the things that we have done, but also other Greek companies, that the last 10 years, what they did was because of the crisis, and that's why really, I know it's a harsh thing to say, but the Greek crisis was maybe the best thing that ever happened to Greece, really, because people woke up, a lot of people left, and now they're coming back, of course, because growth is back, but those people, when they had to believe, what they did was they looked into their own house and they looked at old things. Like, I would say something funny, but it's true. Like somebody would look at the recipe of their grandmother in cheese pies, and they said, okay, how can I get this cheese pie, which is so great in Greece, and transform it, and given the culture in the US, and a company did this, and it started being successful. So the crisis, what I'm trying to say, forced us to look into our own yard and find things, hidden treasures. Now, what we did, which was interesting, was that we discovered that Greek engineering, it is a treasure, it was there. Defense engineering was also there, but because of and it was there, and nobody really took advantage of it to the extent that they did. So what we did was we invested on Greek engineers. We started from almost nothing. Our group was already present globally in many countries, but as advisors, I would say, more than industrialists. So the transformation to the industry was a fairly easy one. And last but not least, at the end of the day, when not just us, but other Greek companies start having a lot of success stories in food sector and other sectors, what is very important, I think somebody mentioned it today, it's very important to teach our young entrepreneurs, Greek entrepreneurs. We focus on young Greek engineers, but it's very important to show them, hey, that's possible, it was done. I mean, we managed, in order to become number one in what we do in the world, we managed to sell to the US Marines. Nobody has done that before. So, but this is an example. Other companies have even bigger success stories to say, Greek story. So these are the three elements I think that are very important to get out of this story, not just our story, but what happened the last 5 or 10 years in Greece.
So this is a question that, again, I'm a little off track. I'm going to get back there, I promise. But I want to dive into your journey a little bit more, because I think that is important that young entrepreneurs hear the truth about entrepreneurship and they understand that it's tough. So what was the toughest moment as when you were starting your company that you remember that kind of gave you a life lesson or taught you a big lesson?
I would say it was not when we started, it was in the middle of the Greek crisis. We were all of a sudden, just like we were just about to start making really sizable contracts abroad, and all of a sudden we could not get any financing, nothing. And it was not just about to finance the transaction, because first of all you had to convince everybody you were a pariah. Our suppliers would say, my God, I cannot send you what you need to get the components, because I don't know if Greece is going to be bankrupt or not in a few months. So we had this. We had then the clients, the end customers who wanted to have some bank guarantees, whatever advance they would give you, or even to participate in tenders. And no bank abroad would confirm an LC from a Greek bank, even if it was, for instance, the National Bank of Greece. That was really a very tough moment. But again, like everything
How did you get through it?
I will tell you. First, we had already built some trust with our suppliers, and they really trusted us. I will say, just as a joke, just to make the discussion a little bit more pleasant here, I remember we had a very big contract in UAE, and our partner there was insisting, and it was a state company, half state company, they were insisting that we give a bank guarantee. We couldn't give them a bank guarantee. So what I did was I had to sign a personal check. In Middle East, especially UAE, if you sign a personal check and you do something bad,
Bad news.
man, you will probably not see the daylight again. So anyway, I did this, and to the credit of our partners, they accepted that. So we were constantly doing those things, but that was really a moment. But you know what? The interesting thing is, and we Greeks are very good at that, to learn from difficult situations. That makes you stronger. That makes you not relying so much on bank debt. You know, let me remind everybody that part of the Greek crisis was also because there was a really abundant bank debt, aside from frivolous consumption. So all those things were good lessons for us.
Yeah. So I do want to get back on topic, and we'll get into some questions about the industry. So what is the potential for Greece in the aerospace and defense industries? Is there a role for you to grow bigger, and is there room for other Greek companies to break through this industry, which is a tough industry?
Yeah. Okay, first of all, the last, from what I remember, 20, 30 years, everybody has been promoting Greece as a hub. Okay, but the problem is a lot of countries say the same thing. Turkey says the same thing. Even if you go in the heart of Asia, they will say, "Oh, we are a hub. You know, we are a hub from Western, Eastern." Everybody has the same kind of story. So, however, now that things have changed in Greece, now that we see growth, right? Now that we see changes in security structures all around Europe, for instance, that there has to be more of a European defense industry. This is the time when NATO countries realize who is their really ally, not just being an ally in words, but in action, and not try to take advantage of every single thing that's going on. So these factors in themselves, they allow Greece to play this role, not just in theory and have some politicians or even business people go and advertise, "Oh, we are the hub of the world," and everything else, but in substance. As I said earlier, it's interesting because of the technology, and because when you have in this world with internet and artificial intelligence, everything is possible, even in Greece, to have industry, for instance, okay, and really industry in high tech, because it's not like you don't need to have big investments. Earlier I heard in this room about a young chap who wants to do algae production. Okay, you need some money, but at the end of the day, in today's age, you can get technology, you can even get money. Now, equipped with all those things, Greece can become a hub in the region. And last but not least, and people don't realize this, that Greeks are cosmopolitan by nature. They are. Because we're a small country, like the Dutch people. You know, the Dutch went everywhere around the world. It was a small country. They even set up New York, and then they sold it for a cheap price, of course. But we are a small nation, and people travel. They travel. They are cosmopolitan. And I think now we are the reason why we can become a hub is because, and I see it from our experience of our company as well, is the fact that we can talk to India and Pakistan the same way. We are liked by both of them. We can talk to Arabs and Jews at the same time, and we're liked by both of them. I can tell you many. What about the South American countries? You know, with when I go there, it's like I'm in Greece. You know, aside from the food, it's like I'm in Greece. So Greeks have this ability, and they for a while, because again of the Greek crisis and what happened before that, everything was introvert. We were thinking in terms of Greece, and everybody. Now that we turn back to the world, and this is important, there's no sustainable growth if you don't leverage whatever you do globally. It's zero. You have zero chance. Zero chance.
Right.
So now that all those things are in place, I'm very optimistic about Greece's role as a hub.
What do you mean when you say a hub? Just because we have a lot of people listening, I want to clarify what does that mean?
Okay, hub in aerospace and defense.
Okay.
Let's be very precise. A hub means that an American company, for instance, can invest in Greece, transfer some technology, and use Greece to promote this technology of course, add industrial value added there and promote it in the region better than them. Or the other thing, which is even more interesting perhaps, is that Indians, UAE, Indonesians, a lot of countries have started developing their defense and aerospace company. You'll be surprised. There's a lot of things going on in this world, and it's not just Far East. Somebody else was mentioning it last night. Is an amazing growth area, and they do have aerospace and defense. The only problem that they don't have is they don't have credibility of NATO. They are not EU nations, obviously. They are not NATO nations, and they are not suitably located. So what we have started as a group, that's why I believe in Greece as a hub, is to talk to those people, because take their technology, right, but do it locally in Greece, and this is, we've already started doing this. So what we have, and I think this is something that is going to be repeated, we have big French companies already there entrusting us to do subcontracting for them, add our value added, and then sell it as our own product. But again, we don't touch anything unless there is some Greek industrial value added, because that's when we can really bring some value to them and to us. So they've already started doing this. Now we start working on the other leg. This is just an example of us.
Sure.
But the same thing can happen with other Greek companies. For instance, Hellenic aerospace industry is a treasure. They have so many things that they have done with big companies, and now they have to turn around and sell it. They have to bring big companies, perhaps like Tata, which is a fantastic aerospace company from India.
Right.
They can bring Mubadala, another UAE company, and they can be their European and NATO arm. There's so many things we can do. It's just that, you know, the parameters were not there. Now they are there. So I'm very optimistic.
It sounds like one of the things you were just hitting on was relationships. And you kind of mentioned it when you talked about your vendors and how they supported you. Talk about the importance, and I'm gonna go back a little bit to being an entrepreneur. Talk about the relationship, the importance of building good relationships with vendors, customers, potential customers, and how do you, I mean, you took your company global. What did it take to do that? What was that part of it like, and how did you do it?
Well, again, you cannot, you have to have some substance. Okay, this is a starting point. I insist on that. You cannot just take the technology of somebody else, really do some monkey business or change it a little bit and then try to promote it as your own. Okay, that's why I insist, as I was saying earlier, that you have value added. So if you have the substance, then starts a long process of convincing people that you're serious. Okay, again, I will talk with examples so that we are specific. When we first got our first contract in Germany, honestly, some people from the armed forces in Germany, they told us, half jokingly, half serious, to say more serious, you guys can only do tourism and souvlaki. We know, well, what are you doing with night vision? And so it took us a long time, and frankly we lost a couple of contracts that we have won because they were not sure we can deliver. And then I started a whole story and fought back. So you have to have patience and perseverance, okay? Because you have to convince people that you're not just a pretty face, and you have to have substance, and you have to convince them that you're serious.
And they're breaking habit. They're breaking a habit.
Exactly.
You got to give them a really good reason to break a habit.
Exactly. And you know, you break also the habits when, frankly speaking, you know, it's a normal process of humanity. You have big companies that they become very complacent. They start run by lawyers. They are getting lazy. People take more holidays, this and that. And you know, in our case, in the beginning, and other Greek companies did do the same thing, I'm sure, you know, it was 24/7. They call us in the middle of the night, they have an issue. Next day in the morning, an engineer from us would go and fly there and serve them. They cannot get this service anywhere else, I believe that. Either because they're far away places, I mean like in the States, or because people, you know, they have to get approval, they have to get this, they have to get that. So it's It is the strength of the little guy, the poor guy,
Right.
that you can transform that.
What that is that's a little bit of grit and perseverance and determination, and also staying small enough that you can be fast to respond to customers like that. So let's get back to the industry. How is the conflict in Europe and in Ukraine specifically? How is that impacting the business? Is this a moment that you see as an opportunity for growth? I hate to say profiting on the conflict, but is this an opportunity for growth? You mentioned that the EU needs a strategy for its own defense industry. Talk about your geopolitical view on what the opportunities are, where you see growth, what the EU needs to do in terms of policy.
First of all, we were growing already the last 3 years between 40 to 60% every year, and that was before the war. So that's number one. Number two, yes, the war, unfortunately, I'm glad we don't deal in our group on lethal technologies. Unfortunately, the war has helped a lot. I mean, and it's helping the defense industry. My hope is that it's going to help to transform it in such a way that Europeans will wake up at all levels, right? And as far as the defense industry in Europe, first of all, it's going to change the attitude, because in the States, I will tell you, if you were saying, whenever I would go in the States and say I'm in aerospace and defense, I was like a hero. Like, oh, that's a great industry, we love this industry, right? And you're good. And then you go to Europe a few years ago and you were saying this and people were, like, God,
Don't back
yeah,
off.
Don't touch. That was the attitude. And if you don't have the public change in the attitude, there is constraint on how much you can grow. So therefore, the European defense industry all of a sudden now it's a different story, because people in Europe realize that we need to have this defense industry. So that's, unfortunately, is a good effect of the war. Not just to sell to right now, which we should definitely help Ukraine to face this amazing event. But the European defense industry is going to start growing a lot, and I think it has already, the pieces of the puzzle were being put by people like visionary leaders, like I would say, like Macron, who was one of the first to talk about the army, and people were laughing and this and that. They don't laugh anymore, unfortunately, because of this event. But I think that the European defense industry, to come to the main focus of our channel, I think the European defense industry wants the procurement, because the defense industry relies on procurements, right? Decisions by ministries across Europe and of course across the globe. So if now finally people realize that the defense procurements in Europe, they have to be partial and objective and not leaning towards at all costs supporting a local company when this local company is no good. I have seen in some countries, big countries, I'm not going to say their names, in Europe, I have seen that they have some companies that are very good in some things, in some areas, like for instance in night vision where we operate, they're really bad, really bad. They have no future. They can only sell to their local ministry, okay? This is bad for the European defense industry. If we're going to help companies, and if we want to create a very good European defense industry, which is important for the security structure of Europe, we have to make procurement decisions in Europe not based on local factors. And
How do you get that? How do you break through, habit and tradition and that protectionism that officials, particularly country politicians, how do you?
I think you're right. I think it's very difficult. I mean, even today we see a lot of those things going on in Europe. But I think I think I want to believe that even the big companies in Europe, they will realize it's to their benefit not to monopolize. Okay, we cannot have, for instance, too many aerospace companies, right? In the
Right.
States also there were 11, 20, and now there are 3 or 4 big ones. Yeah. In Europe, you still have a lot of patches of aerospace companies, so we cannot have that. We cannot have too many aerospace companies, but we can have 3 or 4 big ones, right? And creating a cluster around them with smaller companies. For instance, the Dutch have given up on building, they used to build a lot of big aircraft and Fokker and all that stuff. They stopped all that, but they have put a lot of emphasis on smaller companies that are very successful within Europe and outside Europe by being a second or third tier subcontractor to companies like Boeing or Lockheed. So I think there is the element. What we need now, and that's why I'm saying this war, unfortunately, has also this good effect, is that the Europeans will be forced to take decisions to make sure, in order to make sure that the big items go to the 4 or 5 big export champions of Europe, that the other countries get something.
Right.
Not because they are just members of the EU, because they deserve it. Like that they have to fight for it.
Sure.
I think this is going to take a few more years, but it's going to happen.
And you think that's gonna the war in Ukraine is sort of push that agenda?
Yeah.
And do you think who are the countries that could hold that up? Do you think? And you don't have to answer it. That's a pretty.
Yeah, it's a tough question, but no, I think the countries that have industry that is a dying case, and they are trying at all case to cling it. I have to tell you, some of the big proponents of the European defense industry, they are, without their leaders wanting it, their system, as you mentioned below, works against what they preach. But it's going to change, because when some leaders start preaching this thing, when smaller companies go to the, let's say, to the Minister of Defense of France, UK, and all that stuff, they say, hey, hold on a second, your leader, just as an example, I'm not saying that those countries are those that you mentioned, you have Macron speaking about European defense industry, so why don't you open up the market for us? You understand? That's the only way it's going to happen. It's going to take a few more years, but we're getting there. At least for the first time, it has started.
Do you see one European army, one European Air Force? Do you see a European military that's a combination of?
Yeah, it's very difficult and maybe not necessary. You must have some kind of a joint operations among Europeans, but unfortunately, there is still big reliance. Unfortunately or fortunately, there's big reliance on some things that the Europeans cannot provide. Like I would say, some example: refueling, interoperability. There are some diseases or lack of equipment that the Europeans they don't have. So, and as a matter of fact, I would imagine, ideally, what we were discussing about the European defense industry earlier, the process of making the procurement process, unified and objective, it can be between the U.S. and Europe, because the U.S. also is a very difficult place to sell, right? I mean, if you're not American, or if you're not if you don't have something very, very advanced like the Israelis, or if you don't have a U.S. partner, it's difficult. So maybe that's the solution. Not a European army necessarily, a NATO army, backed by an industry that is European and American at the same time. I know it's too idealistic, but even if you go a little bit towards this direction, it will be enough to do the job.
Well, it might make things, from the procurement standpoint, more competitive for different.
Yes.
Yeah. So right. So I want to. How are we on time? Anybody give me a time check? How are we on time?
Yeah, great.
5 minutes, 10 minutes left?
No, 10 minutes. 10 minutes.
10 minutes. Okay. So, if you don't mind, I'd like to ask the audience if there are any questions or if we can expand the. Anybody have any questions?
It's a difficult subject to have questions.
Well, I've got more. So I just wanted to give a chance to the audience to weigh in. No? Okay. I've got, okay.
So much procurement being globalized and just being defense, and now with the debacle in the Ukraine, what happens with, for instance, Chinese parts coming into European defense industry in the US as well? How is that getting separated over time as well? Going into a new day and new age?
Wow, that's a good one.
That's a great question.
That's a great one. Yeah.
We should have thought of that one.
Really, actually, it's there's China does provide a lot of components even to the European defense industry, for sure. Now, I think it's going to become much more difficult. Now that we have parallels between Taiwan and Ukraine, and Taiwan, for instance, is a country that does a lot of components, in the civil sector, but also in the aerospace and defense sector as well. So I think now you will see a lot of changes in this regard because of this war. Another rise of power, which again, that's why I'm saying it's a very relevant question. I was in Korea 7 days ago, and they had a change of government there, and it's a much more pro-US, being less inclined to let's find a solution and this and that, and they're more aggressive because they realize that a lot of talk all this time has not really produced results. The reason why I'm mentioning this is that Korea is the only place that can replace, from what I'm thinking very quickly, can replace China on those components, because the Korean companies are very good at that. And because we checked prices, for instance, being very specific, I think Korea is very competitive, and they have the skills, right? And China is becoming a little bit more expensive. Let's not forget that. Taiwan is an amazing place to find components. We buy a lot of components from Taiwan, So these two factors, I think, is going to change a lot. Indians are also coming mainstream. India also is opposing China. So I think China is going to lose a lot of business for competitive reasons, not just because of political reasons. So there are those two forces: political, moving things away from China, but also competitive, also bringing new players, like you saw in non-defense. Vietnam, for instance, it's a very competitive place now, and a lot of companies that go there. Another place, as you know, is Bangladesh. Again, not for aerospace and defense, but I don't want to keep this panel just for our sector. Bangladesh is doing extremely well because of this subcontractor.
Yeah.
So there is competition to China now.
Well, I have a question. Since you mentioned your not very good experience with the German procurement in Bundeswehr, etc.
In the beginning.
In the beginning, but
a long time ago.
Anyhow, like now they will make a giant leap from 52 billion
Yes.
euros. They will go to 100 billion euros of investment. One of the issues which they still face, I've been talking to a lot of military intelligence commanders of Bundeswehr. They tell that when they want to upgrade their artificial intelligence and their other mechanisms, by the time the rules of procurement are so slow that by the time they decide to buy one piece of equipment, in 2 years' time when it goes to the Bundeswehr, it's already outdated. How some companies like yours could jump into this process and also guide German government and also these other governments, or maybe under also the umbrella of European defense, to make fast track, especially when it comes to high-end technology and artificial intelligence and weaponry that like you need it right now at this moment, but also with full transparency.
Wow, this is the second great. I'm not saying this
I give up.
No, I'm not saying this to please the
She made me ask questions. I never want to ask questions.
I know, but
I am a
no,
listener.
no, I will tell you, it's very relevant because just before I came here, I just had this discussion from some of our people in Berlin. Exactly the question you place. Seriously, they would probably think I put the people
Why you protect your phones?
the question.
You can pay him later. You can pay.
Anyway, yes. So no. The reason why there is a very small delay in approval of this big budget in Germany in the parliament and also start the process is because of this reason. They are looking how to right now in Germany how to do it properly and to do it in such a way that we will not have exactly what you just said before. I think we are maybe, believe it or not, maybe we are 1 or 2 weeks, not months, away from the final resolution. Because, and I think, and that's why West is such a great place, because we have democracy and we have to respect certain rules. And the Germans, they had some rules that were not very experienced because they were not buying a lot of, they were buying, but in relatively terms, they were not buying a lot of defense products. They started learning the last 2 years, and now they, just as quickly as they make the decision about 100 billion euros to invest in overnight, you will be surprised in 1 or 2 weeks what's going to happen. They will change all this. And Germans, you know, when they decide to do something, they do it. They don't waste time.
Thank you. I think that's a good note to end on. And we have another panel. Thank you for joining us here at Davos. It's the end of the. Stay online. If you're online, stay online. We've got another great panel starting here in just a second, and tune in tomorrow, day 2 at Davos. So thank you.